We are live and we are back. And we are tonight with Dave Spinks. Let me see here quick. You are the co founder and owner of Society of the Supernatural and founder and owner at Real Supernatural,
Yep,
correct?
yep, that's right.
All right, cool. And so, what got you interested and started in the paranormal?
Well, what really kind of set me off on my own journey was I had a Bigfoot experience with my late grandfather, who was a Baptist minister for 40 plus years, and the whole experience was very terrifying. And but at the same time, I was super intrigued about it and wanted answers as to what I saw because I had never really heard of Bigfoot, so to speak. Around here in West Virginia, the old timers talk about the woolly boogers and the blue demons and this and that, but you don't really put two and two together. And I realized then that's what they were all talking about. Every county in West Virginia has a different name basically for Bigfoot, and they call it by so many names, but in reality, they're talking about the same type of creature. So I had that experience. I've told it on TV. I've written about it in my Bigfoot book. And basically, I'll give you the long and short of it was me and my grandpa were fishing at one of our favorite spots. I was 13 years old. It was 1983.
Hmm.
Um, Place we had been to many, many times. Got there, we're going to spend the entire weekend there camping out and everything, set up all of our gear, started fishing. Out of nowhere, I caught a really nice trout right off the bat. We caught all of our trout. We limited out and we cooked them up and had it eaten. And it was just before dark now. It was just that twilight. You could still see good, but the darkness was setting in.
Right?
And we were sitting there just full, going, man. I mean, we ate like, champions there. We were just stuffed. And out of nowhere, this giant splash hits out in the middle of the river. Now, the river where we were at that point was from one bank to the other was about anywhere from 60 to 75 yards across. The other side of the bank was really steep, really rugged, and it's an area that people just don't really fish because it's too hard to get down in. It's in a big canyon, and it's rocky, it's dangerous on that other side.
Right?
So this big splash happens out in the middle of the river, and the splash was so big that it rained down water. It wasn't just a rock this big or this big. This is a rock that had to be massive, but neither one of us saw it. We just heard the big splash and the deep kawoom, and then the rain down of water, right? So we
Right?
jump up, we're looking around, we're trying to figure out what the heck made that splash. And at this point, we didn't know it was a rock. So after several minutes of looking around, we were thinking maybe a big tree branch fell in the river, but we couldn't find it. We would have seen that floating. There was nothing floating, nothing. No, and there's rock cliffs, so then we are trying to rationalize, well, maybe a rock rolled off, but to me that didn't make sense because we would have heard that thing just bouncing down the mountain and
Right?
kaboom. So after several minutes, we kind of just said, well, chalked it up as that was weird and sat back down and we're enjoying our fire. And then just a few minutes later, it had to be no more than 2 minutes, I heard something hitting the tree limbs. Like, how, say, if you throw something that's whooshing through the tree limbs, you can hear it hitting. And out of my peripheral, I look and I see a massive boulder. I mean, something I couldn't even get my arms around today come shooting up in an upwards direction through the tree limbs on the other side of the river and come out and land in the water. Well, I know my grandpa seen it too because we both jumped up and we were freaking out. What the hell? And he's like, in his mind, he thinks it's people over there messing with us, and he yells out, "You hoodlums, knock it off, or I'm gonna let you have it." So I turned to look at him as he's saying that. He's running back to the tent, and I know he's going to get his little thing. He always carried a gun of some sort in the woods.
Hmm.
He goes back to our tent and grabs a single shot squirrel gun. And he comes back, and about the time he gets back to me, he hears this god awful guttural howling. Just, I mean, come out from that side of the woods, like so. It was so powerful. Like, if you ever been to a rock concert or a concert where the bass of the drum is so
Oh
heavy
yeah.
you can feel it inside you, That's how
Mhm.
this thing roared, man. And I'm telling you, it still sends shivers from my head to my toe to this day. So that thing lets out this guttural howl, like you would. I mean, it's so hard to describe, but it's just lucid, man. I mean, it's just powerful. And after that happened, starts cracking off shots over in that direction, yelling back out there and said, "I told you, knuckleheads, I'm gonna, let you have it." Now my grandpa he stormed the beaches at Normandy, World War II veteran. He did not mess around, and this man was not afraid of anything. So while that's going on, that thing's over there starts raising all kinds of cane, shaking trees that are 40, 50, 60 foot tall, big saplings that a man couldn't move. This thing's raising cane, howling, screaming over there, and making one god awful ruckus. And you can see the trees shaking from this thing, right? So he yells at me, he says, "Get to the truck, boy." And so I run to the truck. It's about 20, 30 yards from us, parked kind of at an angle. And I get down by the front left tire and I'm peeking around like this, looking in that direction where all this ruckus is coming from while my grandpa cracked off 5, 6, I don't even know how many shots, probably anywhere from 5 to 8, 9 shots with a single shot. So he's just like racking rounds and unloading it, racking another one, boom, fast as he could go. And then you see that this where the trees are shaking, it starts moving in an upwards away from us direction, and you can follow this thing's path by the way the trees are moving. So this was going on. This is all happening in a matter of like 3 minutes. And as I'm watching the trail of this thing, there's a clearing, and it comes into this clearing, and I see it from about the waist up. Huge creature covered in hair, little tiny head and massive shoulders that was probably double the size of my grandfather. And my grandfather was 6'4". He was a massive man. This thing dwarfed him, and I could see it from 60 yards like it was right there. It never looked at me. I never saw any facial features. It had no neck, a little bitty head, and just pure muscle. You could see through the hair. And the hair was like a dark brown, almost black with some red striations in it. And it just kept on walking away. And my grandfather, that's when I knew he saw it because he came running. And he grabs me with one arm, opens the truck door, and slings me through the cab of the truck. And the only thing that stopped me was the passenger side door. I slammed into it like that. He jumps in. He said, "We're getting out of here, son. That's not of God." So he jams that truck, man, and it's like a 3 mile drive up out of this dirt road down into the canyon that's full of potholes. It's just a really rough road. And he's bottoming that truck out. And the whole time I've got my head buried in my hands like this, going, oh my God, he's gonna break the truck and that thing's gonna kill us. So what felt like an eternity, we get up there, we make it and we start driving around. He's not saying a word. And it sounded like pieces of the truck were falling off of this thing. I mean, that's we're bottoming out, bang, bang, boom.
Yeah.
We finally get on the hard road, drive around for about like a half an hour. He finally pulls off the road and he said, "Son, we better not tell no one about this. They're gonna think we're crazy." And here he's a preacher. He has a flock to worry about, and and everything. And so we kind of made a promise from that day on never to talk about it. So the crazy thing is, I kept my end of the promise. So, here I am all these years, and I've been, my name's known in the paranormal, and I get this question a lot. I never told it because I made that promise, and finally, my grandfather he passed away. It's been about let's see, 5 years ago now. And finally, I decided, I get this question all the time on radio shows and everything, and I'm going to start talking about it because this is what really started me on my journey into the paranormal back in 1983. And I really didn't start investigating per se until like 86, 87 when I saw the show In Search Of and saw what they were doing. And I said, hey, I got a recorder just like that. I can do that. So
Right.
I just started reading and researching because I wanted to know what Bigfoot was. I never heard of this thing before, in that aspect. And that's when I discovered the Patterson-Gimlin film. I didn't know nothing about any of that stuff. Just heard the old timers talk about woolly boogers and stuff here in West Virginia, right? So the funny part is, I said I decided I was going to start talking about this story, and I'd already written it in a book I was working on. I just never released it. And called my uncle because I wanted the family to know, hey, I'm going to start talking publicly about this. And he's like, oh, you're talking about that time you and Papa saw the monkey man in the woods. And I'm like, wait a minute, he told you? He said, oh yeah. I said he said, yeah, he told me that story like 25 years ago. Because he said if something happens to me, I want other people to know what we saw that day, you know. So he told my uncle, and here I've been sitting on it all these years, you know. And I was like, oh man. But that's basically how it all went down. If you saw the show Terror in the Woods or These Woods Are Haunted that I told that story on, they did a really good job, but only thing I have gripes about is they added a few things that didn't happen. And
Right.
then they switched some stuff around in the order they happened. So that's frustrating about the TV aspect of it. But if you want to know the real story, read my book, West Virginia Bigfoot. It's available on Amazon, and you can get signed copies directly from me if you email me.
Okay.
And it's got a lot of other. It doesn't have just my story. I've got stories from state troopers, doctors, lawyers, teachers, all in West Virginia. Some people were visiting. Yep, that's it right there.
There you go.
That had witnessed a creature similar to what I saw here in West Virginia. So it's still, it affected me very, very negatively. I didn't go in the woods by myself or deep in the woods for like 6 or 7 years after that.
Wow.
And now to this day, I don't even go in the woods unless I have a heavy caliber firearm
I
with me.
know.
How you doing, Dale?
Yeah. So you mentioned the Patterson Gimli film. How close in resemblance to what was on that film that was the creature?
Very, very similar. When I first saw the clip of that, I was like, "That's what I saw, no doubt about it." Except, of
Mhm.
course, that one was a female, and I don't think the one I saw was a female. It was massive. This thing, I mean, you could literally see the muscle striations in this thing, man.
Mhm.
It was just built like a brick. You know, I mean, you know what house, and
Oh yeah.
I mean, and the head on this thing looked tiny compared to its body. It had no neck. It was just all broad shoulders, and it was like a wedge. This thing was like a wedge, man. And I got a really good look at it for a good 15 to 30 seconds,
Yeah.
and for whatever reason, it was just tearing the woods down and never looked back at us, in our direction when it went through
Well,
that clearing.
maybe it's a little tick that your grandfather was shooting at it.
Yeah, I mean, I
He was
got the
shooting in
feeling,
its
He
direction.
may have nicked it.
yeah, he probably peppered it a few times, I'm sure, but at that range, it's not going to hurt nothing. Might burn it a little bit, but
Right.
with the kind of gun he was using. But
Well,
I
you
mean,
said it was a squirrel gun. Is that one of those 410 shotguns?
I think it was a 12 gauge, but still, it only had school shot in it.
Okay.
Because we kept one around for snakes and different things like that. So,
Okay.
um, but when I reassessed it so many times, ran it through my head over and over, it was almost like it was pissed that we were there because we were catching those fish and we were in its territory for what, and we'd been there. I mean, many, many times over the years. I grew up fishing there, never, never saw anything. But later on, I found out that my grandpa that was with me, his wife, her brother was down around that same area some years before us cutting firewood, and he said because he told my uncle this, and when I that told me my grandpa told him the story. He was down there cutting firewood. You got the chainsaw running, you don't hear anything, and he looked up and there was a Bigfoot standing 10 feet away from him. And he said he flipped backwards over the log, almost cut his leg off, and he never went back down there. And then over my years of research, I've talked to many, many people here in the area, in the local area, that have claimed to have seen these creatures walking in that same area and in the river and everything else. So it's all in that Bigfoot book, and that's I wrote that several years ago, and now I'm getting ready to come out with a new one, probably late 2021. So with more people's accounts and other things like that, but um, you know it's a fascinating thing. It's also very scary. When you
Oh, hello,
and I
Ireland.
don't try to change anyone's mind on this stuff. I just share my experiences and other people's experiences. They can take, make what they want out of it. I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
here to, you know, I'm not here to. it's like religion and politics. You know, you can't change anyone's mind unless they have their own experience. So I just share with what I, with what I had and other people have had. You know, I look when you have the people, the caliber of people that I have in my books, like law enforcement officers, doctors, lawyers. In this new book, I even have a prosecuting attorney. I mean, these people have something to lose by going out and talking about this stuff. So, that's what's key for me as well.
Right. So you've done a lot of interviews with different witnesses
Oh,
and
yeah. I
come up
mean,
with pretty much the same thing.
well, basically on my website, if you guys checked it out, I have a hotline on there. People can call me with any kind of sightings,
Cool.
experiences. And if they want me to come out and investigate, show me, share any kind of proof, pictures, whatever, I'll go out and investigate their location and tell their story for them, put their story in my books and whatnot. Because I think it's important. That's
Yeah,
knowledge is power. The more we talk about these things, the more
that's,
information we.
that's under his contact on his website.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So you got the map of West Virginia up there. Have you thought about maybe putting little pinpoints of where a lot of the sightings have been seen?
Well, that's Google Maps. I don't know if they'll let me do that, but yeah, I mean, I've got a whole bunch of them, and it seems here in the state, the hot spots are the Monongahela National Forest. That's one of the main hot spots here in West Virginia. It's a vast expanse of land that's very rugged, very rural. Not a lot of people at all out there. There's places out there that people probably haven't walked on in 100 years. That's how rugged it is, and it goes all the way up into Pennsylvania. There's a corridor and it runs right into Chestnut Ridge, which if you guys know anything about Chestnut Ridge, it's a super hot spot for Bigfoot, UFOs, and hauntings as well. So I think these things are like people. There's different colors of them, different kind of like different races, so to speak, or
Right.
different genomes, but they're all the same type of creature. There's different sizes of them. And I also, excuse me, um, I also feel that they are nomadic and they move around a lot where they go where the food is. But like here in West Virginia, for example, there's plenty of caves for these things to stay in, plenty of cover, plenty of
Mhm.
food, and they can, it's very rural and rugged area. Like where I live right here, I can drive down the road not even a mile, and I'm surrounded by just millions of acres of rugged woodland that's national forest that people just don't go very deep into.
Right. Right. Yeah, I know the cave systems in the United States are actually fairly extensive.
Hmm.
I've seen some layover maps of the cave systems here. So you were talking about that corridor and everything. You were saying earlier before we came on that you also deal in more than just the cryptids. You have an interest in like the UFOs and stuff like that too.
Oh, absolutely. I've written numerous books on various topics. I've done hundreds upon hundreds of haunting investigations. But for me, and I've done my fair share of UFO investigations, interviews, and abduction cases, and the whole. I get it all, man. On that, people like
Yeah.
right now, I'm probably backed up for 7 months on investigations. I mean, just
Just three of his
I'm only
books there.
I'm only one man. I can only get to what I can get to, but
Right.
um, and of course, you got the Willow's Wheat book up there, which is a house I bought just to have my own paranormal lab, a famous haunted house, well-known haunted house, and I
So
bought
you
it just to
you
have my
actually
own.
bought a haunted house.
Yes.
Wow.
That's pretty
I
cool.
didn't find that in my research. I guess I didn't
Yep.
look hard enough.
It's on the website there. It'll tell you all about it, and it's in that book. Talks about how I first became to investigate it, and then became friends with the former owner, and after some time, she said that she felt the house tried to kill her and her husband a couple of different times, and she asked me if I wanted it, and I said, "Well, let me think about that because it's a very negative haunting." Um, so we talked about it and came to terms, and I ended up buying it because I said, "Well, what better of a place to have to actually have your own paranormal lab to study the paranormal? Set up different experiments, run
True.
cameras in there." Try to document paranormal phenomena. I mean, that's what it's all about. We're trying
Oh
to
yeah, definitely.
scientifically move the field forward as much as possible right now, as much as you can, with the word paranormal, because it's the unknown. We don't know how these
Hmm.
things work. We don't know why they're here, what they're doing, who they actually are. So, it's just a baby step forward, man. So if I find one little piece of the puzzle, it's all worth it to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all it is theories right now. Everybody's got their own theories. Nothing's been.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these things are interconnected, man. If you do any kind of research and you look at a lot of times people are making the connections in recent years when there's a rash of Bigfoot sightings, there's also a rash of strange lights in the sky and vice versa.
I was
So
just gonna come up with that and ask you about that.
yeah,
With
yeah,
with with your interviews of the witnesses to the Bigfoot sightings, did they say anything to you about seeing any kind of
yeah,
phenomena in the
yeah.
sky?
In some cases, yeah, they also talk about that same night or or the day before we saw these strange lights in the sky and then we saw this and then or vice versa. It's happening. It seems to be happening more and more often now. And if you even go back to some of the older cases, the well-known cases, the same thing happened. Look at the Day at Love Pass incident. I mean, the locals talk about that area as being, of the devil, so in their language, and it's an evil place. But they're and the local tribes there, the night that all went down, they saw strange lights in the sky, and then next thing you know, they find all those people dead, and some of them had masses of amounts of radiation still on their bodies. They were measuring it, and there's supposedly Yeti or Bigfoot pictures of creatures that may have killed these people.
Wow, that is pretty interesting.
Hmm.
So, in your studies of the Bigfoot, I'm gonna stay on Bigfoot for a second here. In your studies of them, did you find any like evidence or information of
I've
about
come
Mount
across
St.
the.
Helens?
Oh yeah, well that when you
And
research that one,
back in '80 when that
yeah.
blew up, there was
Hmm.
a retired um, Army National Guard, I believe. The guy
Yep.
did an interview, and it's somewhere on YouTube, and I haven't been able to find it yet. And
Hmm.
it's only audio. There's no video to it. But he claims that there were dead bodies and live bodies of Bigfoots on the mountain that they actually recovered.
Yeah. I have read and heard things. There was eyewitness, multiple eyewitness, not just one guy. It was multiple eyewitness that said they saw military choppers carrying big nets with dead Bigfoot bodies in those nets off the mountain. And then, of course, you touched on that. Other people said they saw a live body once too.
Hmm.
So there's stories from military members, like in training maneuvers in the Pacific Northwest, where they were paralleled by groups of Bigfoot at night during their training missions. There's a lot of Vietnam veterans that said they've had outright fights with what they called the rock apes of Vietnam. These things were highly agile and violent towards them. And even some claim that some of their buddies were killed by some of these ape-like creatures.
Wow.
So, and the locals talk about it to this day. They call them the rock apes. So, it's another term for Bigfoot. These things are seen all over the world, and what they are, we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different theories out there. Some people feel they're extraterrestrial. Some people feel they are interdimensional. If you go to Native American lore and Native American history, they've got rock art and cave drawings of these things that have been proven to be thousands of years old. They have in their oral traditions they talk about having fought these creatures. They call them the woods people or whatever, and they came to a. All the tribes seem to come to some agreement that that's their area over there. They mark it. You stay out of it, and this is our area over here. So there's a lot of incidents where various tribes, almost every tribe in the United States has some type of historical tale of having encounters with these types of creatures. And for
Yeah.
me, that says a lot. That says a lot for me. These things go back for thousands of years. What they are, what they're doing here, who knows? Some people think they could be a ghost of a long extinct ape species because there's stories of, say, hunters. They see one in the woods when they're hunting, so they're following the tracks. They lose sight of the thing for just a moment. They get to that spot, and then the track stop, and the thing just is gone.
Yeah.
So what do you make out of that? Did
There
it
are
go
also
into
some
a
theorists
portal
that
or what?
right, there are some theorists that believe that the Bigfoot is an is a remnant of an ancient species called the Gigantopithecus,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Mm-hmm.
a just a giant ape
Hey.
that you know
Mm-hmm.
like the silverback gorilla and stuff. Only it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to
But
be bigger.
much
It's
much
supposed to be way
bigger.
bigger.
Way bigger. Yeah.
Well, look how the tracks they found those tracks up in the Himalayas. And it's almost impossible for modern man to get to that location where those tracks
Hmm.
actually were.
Yep.
To get down there in the snow. Back then, what do they call it there? The Yeti. That's
The
what it's
Yeti.
called
Yep.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you take that into account, why if it's so dangerous for man to get up to those types of altitudes and everything, I find it very hard to believe that they would going through what they went through just to climb that peak or those peaks. Why would they go up there and try to fake some kind of monster evidence? That
Right.
it's just it's a feat upon itself just to do what they're doing.
Right.
You
Tom
know.
came up with a good one here. He said Nephilim, and Nephilims are
Mhm.
basically the children
Mhm.
of human females and fallen
Mhm.
angels,
Yep. Yeah, and
and
there's a lot of
they're
stories.
supposed to be giants. The Nephilim
Yeah.
are supposed to be giants.
Very vile, very disgusting. If you do any research on the Nephilim, they were said to eat men. And some it would take two normal sized men just to come standing on top of each other just to come up to their knees. That's how big these things were. And if you follow the stories of the giants, which we know are true, there has been giant skeletons found all over the earth. Some claim
Yeah,
to
there
have been
have.
up to 20 feet tall. Some have double rows of teeth. Right here in West Virginia, there's numerous giant skeletons that have been found. So, are those offspring of these things, or what are they? So, and it seems like
Yeah,
almost in every case when a giant skeleton was uncovered, the government agents from the Smithsonian would swoop in and scoop these skeletons up, never to be heard from again. It happened over and over
never
again.
to be seen, never to be heard.
Yep,
They
yep.
put them, they lock them away, and nobody gets to look at them
Yep.
except for their people.
They got them in the
Uh,
vaults down there.
I believe it. I agree with it. So anyway, Joe, did you get my message there?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna be right back because I need to use the bathroom like really
All
bad.
right, all right.
I'm sorry, this is a first.
It happens. Nature calls.
Yeah. Sometimes. So so that's I mean, there's so many theories about Bigfoot that and then there's so little lack of proof, except for of course, they've got the hairs out there, but some of those hairs have been defined as bear or whatever. But then there's those that they can't put it with any species because it's not in their computer database.
Hmm.
So
Well,
it's
just
like
in some of the
unidentified. And then
yeah,
with
some of the
all those casts coming from all over the world, basically,
mhm.
because you've got it, Japan, whatever, Vietnam, they've all got their version and they've got these casts, but it's not enough proof yet. It's like, what do they
Mhm.
need? You
Well,
gotta,
that's the interesting point, man. So I'll give you an example, a case I worked here in West Virginia. So this farmer in a rural area wakes up one morning. There's about 6 inches of snow on the ground, and there's a trackway coming out of his field across the two-lane paved road up into his yard, goes under his clothesline and up behind his house into the woods. Well, the stride length between these tracks was like 62 inches up
that's
there.
like 6 feet,
Yep.
damn
So
near.
whatever, and they're humanoid tracks. They're in the snow, but they tried to make some casts of them. Of course, they were real iffy because of the snow and everything.
Yeah,
But um, so underneath the clothesline where this thing went, it left a tuft of hair. Like it went
Yeah.
under the clothesline. For whatever reason, and obviously had to bend down, and there were some clothespins and whatnot. And so they called the local sheriff. They came down. They brought the local veterinarian. Came down, took the sample of the hair, sent it off to the veterinarian, took it, sent it off to a lab, and they kept waiting and waiting and waiting. Never heard nothing back. Called them, and they denied ever even getting that sample. So there's a cover up, obviously, right there.
Right.
What they had proof of it. They documented it with the local sheriff. They took pictures of it, and never heard nothing back. And every time they would call the lab back to get information, they would totally deny ever getting it. or anything. So, it's a cover up. There's a lot of cover ups going on in this world that we don't know why, but we don't know if Bigfoot is some kind of weird project the government came up with to cross ape and man, and that's what resulted. Who knows? But there's
Super
definitely a
project.
cover up.
Yeah, there was that one lab that was what was it? I saw it on Ventura's thing, conspiracy theories.
Plum Island.
Yeah, and God knows what came out of that place.
Mm-hmm. And we do know the government is experimenting all the time with different things. So why they mess with stuff like that, I don't know. Probably to try to create hybrid soldiers or some craziness.
Super soldier program.
Well, yeah, they've always had that super soldier program. I mean, think about it. They were trying to feed the soldiers way back when with cocaine and all kinds of other drugs and stuff to try to make the
LSD,
perfect soldier.
cocaine,
LSD,
all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
I mean, it's crazy what it could possibly be, and the reasons. I mean, it doesn't go just that high. I mean, it goes that high, but it even down to the local governments. Where, for example, when I watched that documentary because we're in Wisconsin here, and we've got that. There's been a black cat seen quite often.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Home of the dog man too.
Well, yeah, the Beast of Bray Road.
Yeah.
But they got the feline, the black cat. They call it a panther, but we all know panthers don't exist because it's a
pigment.
It's a pigment.
It's a pigmentation disease.
Right. Thank you. But they say it's not possible in cougars, and it's like, okay, why not? If it's possible in the leopards and the jaguars and these other cats, why can't it be possible in the cougars and the mountain lions? Because that's what we have here, and that's more than likely what people are seeing. But yet DNR says, don't exist.
Well, it's a hybrid. It could be a hybrid that they did. They got loose. Who knows? I mean, there's thylacine sightings still to this day. We've seen where they actually crossbred a tiger and a lion. They call it a liger. Yeah. And it's a massive creature, man. I mean, this thing is
it
massive.
is. It's very massive.
I would not want to run into one of those.
But it also it is fertile or not infertile. Mm-hmm. It can't be bred again.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, like the guy from like that guy, what's his name from Jurassic Park? Nature finds a way.
Life finds a way.
Yeah.
You never know.
Finds a way.
You were talking about this Bigfoot that you guys seen that they measured the stride at 63 inches.
It was like 62, I believe, 61 or 62. Yeah.
Another person that we actually talked to that's here in Wisconsin, we interviewed him. Wasn't he the last interview we had, Joe? He does.
Jay.
Yeah, Jay. He does investigations in Kettle Moraine Forest area here.
The southern part of Kettle Moraine Forest.
Yeah, the southern part.
Because he lives right close by it.
Right. Him and his wife actually went out.
Excuse me.
Bless you. Him and his wife were actually out on the trail after a snowfall, and they came across imprints which look like foot imprints that were I think he said were 54 inches across.
Well, I mean, if you make it makes sense. Think about all the stories that are told about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and all of that going across the road with like 2 steps, and they're from one side to the other in like 2 steps. Makes sense.
What rational person or regular person is going to run around in the woods with bare feet? I mean, come on. In the snow.
Happening.
In the snow.
Not me.
You can see that happening.
What?
It's not going to happen.
In some of those places in the woods, you don't even know what you're going to step on, for Christ's sake. I wouldn't want to be, in Virginia, for example, I don't know what's there, but I bet you there's poisonous snakes there compared to over here.
I mean, there's, not to mention just walking in your bare feet on rock and sticking up, stabbing your feet, and I mean, stickers.
God knows what, yeah.
Thorns,
I don't think so.
Bushes, you got rocks.
Yeah.
Sharp rocks.
No.
Hell, when I was a kid, I used to wade barefoot in the river, and I wound up cutting my foot a couple of times.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because of the rocks. So yeah, nobody in their right mind is going to be out in the woods, especially during the wintertime.
Yeah, I would, frostbite on my I value my feet. I want to keep them.
Yep.
So, since you bought that house, we'll go to that now. Since you bought that house and you've done investigations there, what's the I guess the strangest um, experience you may have had, or evidence that you have caught?
Well, the best piece of evidence that's come out of there, and let me tell you, there's been a ton of it. The whole gambit from things moving on their own, EVPs, disembodied voices, people's equipment shutting off for no reason, fully charged batteries, the whole gambit of the, what we look for in the paranormal, various equipment going off like crazy. Just and almost every single group I think I've ever talked to that has been in there has some really good evidence. There's only been one or two groups that didn't really capture much. So the house has a ton of history. Of course, it was built by Freemasons for a Mason, I believe, because there's a lot of Mason symbology in this house. It's built in the shape of a cross. Um,
Interesting.
and there's been numerous deaths in the house, and at least two suicides, possibly three in the house over the years. Many sightings of apparitions, shadow figures, pictures of these things. And the latest one that was captured there, I've been filming a documentary there about the house and everything else.
Mhm.
And so the guy I was filming with, he had stuck a GoPro camera, a regular GoPro, wasn't infrared, wasn't full spectrum, nothing, right up on top of one of the doors, just for another angle while we were shooting like an interview with me talking inside the house. Well, there was four of us there. We were all done shooting for the day, and we were in the back building. You can see the top of that back building there by the trees, in between the trees. That's a big like metal building with a
Yep.
cement floor. It's a
Okay.
garage basically, and we were in there packing all of our gear up. There was no one around the house, no one in the house, and we just loaded everything up. And he goes, "Oh crap, I forgot the GoPro in there." So he just ran in the house, grabbed it off the door, and locked the door behind him, and we left. Well, about a month later, he calls me up, just freaking out, said, "I'm never going in that effing house again." I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude? What happened?" He's like, "I'm sending you a clip right now, and you should have it by now." So I went in my email, and there's a full blown shadow figure in one of the rooms during broad daylight that is unlike anything I've ever seen before. So that's an apparition someone caught in the window of the old woman
I
that
can see
died
it.
in the house. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of pictures like that and different people's evidence and whatnot. So I mean, this shadow figure is pretty phenomenal, and you can see it on my YouTube page. Um, you just go to videos and scroll down, and you'll see Shadow Man captured, and just watch that video. So
Okay.
it'll trip
I'll have
you
to
out.
check that out. Yeah, I don't know.
So, and
I've seen
what's
enough
cool
in my
about that
youth.
too? What's cool about that, guys, is right before you see the shadow figure, there's all these unexplained knocks and bangs in the house, and sounds like a dragging sound. And then you see the shadow figure, and I zoomed in on it so you can see it really good. And there's all, and it walks across the room, and then it looks like something comes out of the room, like a white misty and a smoky like substance, type of situation comes out of the room too. And it was captured like at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening in broad daylight. And for someone, even if someone would have walked outside the house by the windows to create a shadow inside the house, you would have seen them through the other windows, and you would have seen the shadow that was captured on film from probably maybe the waist up or the knees up if it was a person on the outside. The whole shadow figure is in the picture. It's in the
Wow.
house.
Well,
So there's
you can also tell the difference too
oh yeah.
of a
And you can
shadow that's on the wall, or
yep, you'll know it when you see it. I've never seen anything like it.
rather than an apparition that's standing there.
Hmm. Yep. Yep. So check it out. I highly recommend you guys check
Yeah,
it out. It's pretty
I'll tell
trippy.
you. I'll tell you. Yeah, I don't think it'd phase me because I've seen way too much in my youth to really be phased. I'm kind of jaded to a lot of this stuff. You get that
It
way
is what
whenever
it is.
you get that way whenever you when you're sitting on the front stoop and you're kind of teed off at someone, and and you're trying to cool off, and you kind of glance over to your right and watch this enormous shadow figure just rise up out of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it did. It just like it looked like it just stood right up, and this thing had to be like 9 feet tall at least, and built
Mm-hmm.
like a brick outhouse.
He's a
Yep. Yep.
So
transplant from California, so
yeah, I come from Cali. I was born and raised out there and moved here in '93 to Wisconsin. But yeah, so there's stuff like that kind of jades you to a lot of the paranormal that we investigate.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is like when you capture something on film that you can physically show others
Oh
that
yeah,
I know this stuff's real. I've had all kind of crazy experiences, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to show people, hey, this stuff is all around us all the time, and you never know what you're gonna get, man.
oh
Especially when
yeah,
you go out
definitely.
looking for it. When you go out looking for it, your life can be literally turned upside down. Let me tell you, I've been
Yeah.
there from it.
Yeah, and there are people who are extremely sensitive to the supernatural and to the energies that are set off by these beings. And there are some people that are I would put them as being you know in a
Skeptics.
box to where they can't sense anything.
Well,
They
here's
won't be
here's
able to
what I
find their
think.
way out of a wet paper bag type of thing.
Here's what I think about that, guys. So we all know there's skeptics because
Hmm.
everybody wants a rational explanation for something they can't explain. Fear is very powerful, and some
Yes, it
people,
is.
when they realize they've seen something that they don't understand or they can't explain what it is, it's very frightening to them, and they just chalk it up. Oh, it was just a trick of light, or it was just that, because
Mhm.
their mind, in a sense, cannot rationalize what just happened or what they saw. As well as I do. Most of the time, when you see apparitions or whatever, they're either out of your peripheral or they're behind you for whatever reason. Very rarely are you going to see one straight up. And I often tell people, hey, have an open mind. Don't be so closed off that just because you see a shadow, yeah, sure, it doesn't mean it's paranormal related.
No.
But when the hair on the back of your neck listen to your body, because when the hair on the back of your neck and your arm stands up, we all have that built-in fight or flight, and that's there for a reason. That
Hmm.
your body is your best tool when it comes to this stuff. If something's telling you I need to get the hell out of there, get the hell out of there, because your body is a powerful tool and it can pick up on different energies and whatnot.
No, yeah, I agree with you on that. The only difference that I have to say on that is the fact that yeah, fight or flight. I have yet to have the flight response. I am always the one that if I feel that there's something there, I want to know it. I want to see it. I even want to touch it. And I don't
Of
I don't
course.
run. I stand my ground.
No, that's what we do. But Joe Blow paranormal enthusiasts, most times they're going to haul ass if they don't see something. you know, I mean, if they see something, but there's a big difference in them and what I do and what you guys do. And that's what we do. We're there trying to show proof of this stuff and document it. So,
Well, it's not
um,
just because I'm trying to show proof. I mean,
well, we've also debunked some things too.
yeah,
of
I
course,
have
you got to
debunked
debunk
stuff.
it.
You
Yeah,
know,
you
I
got to
mean,
debunk.
we've
I'm my
debunked
worst
our own
skeptic.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm my
Hmm.
own worst skeptic. If I film something or get something on tape, I try to debunk it. I try
Of course.
to make sense of it, other than that it's something that's a out of body or a no an apparition or an
Hmm.
energy source that's causing it, that's not of physical form.
Sure.
So
Hmm.
that's what makes me my own worst skeptic, because I will actually take and go back to a site if I got the opportunity to and try to recreate exactly what I think I
Hmm.
caught.
But
And I've
if
done
you
it a
think
couple of
about
times.
that, if you think about that, it's almost nearly impossible. You may have had a true paranormal experience, but scientifically, you're not going to make these things do tricks, so to speak, upon request. I mean,
No, no,
you
I
know,
agree
No,
with that.
but
but
you go
but
back
if
and
you
try
can
to
make it
recreate it.
happen again, exactly how it happened, then you're saying, okay, this is possibly okay. We can look for a cause for this now. Maybe it is debunkable or whatnot. But if you can't, then you have to sit there and say, wait a minute, man.
Right.
We may have captured the so-called holy grail right here, or
Right.
whatever the case may be.
Right.
So yeah, obviously you as investigators and researchers, you have to try to debunk everything you can.
It's
If
like
you can't, that's why it's called the paranormal. It can't be duplicated scientifically most of the time. So if it can be, it's most likely not paranormal, obviously.
right. Well, we went.
Well,
Well, that's like we
kind
went
of,
back.
kind of
Like we.
yes, kind of no on that.
Well, you sort of saw that shadow. We thought we saw a shadow figure at Forest Hill Cemetery.
Yeah, we
We
were
went
filming at
back.
Forest Hill.
We went back. We recorded. Did it again. Got the same thing, and it was pretty much we figured it out. It was just the time of day we were out there, the trees,
Mhm.
the way the sun was positioned in the sky at the time,
Mhm.
and so on and so forth. You know,
Oh yeah, trees
because
can
like you
play
said,
some.
oh
When you're
yeah,
outside,
Oh
it's
yeah,
a whole
trees can
different
really
ballgame.
screw with you.
well
When
you gotta realize your environment when you're around too, doing this,
yeah. If the
especially when you're
wind's blowing
outdoors.
just a little bit and the lighting's right, the trees will scare the hell out of you because they'll
Well,
create all kind of spooky looking shadows, man, out
yeah,
there.
how this happened is Joe actually said that he thought he saw something in a specific direction, and it's well, what was it, Joe? It was like late July, early August that we were out there.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
It was
so
middle of summer.
it was still summertime. Mosquitoes like crazy, and I didn't think to bring spray for one. So I had the camera. I was holding the camera and filming, and he's like over here in this direction. So I moved it over, and I had really bad shaky camera work because of the fact that I'm trying to film where he wants, and I'm fighting mosquitoes off at the same time.
Tripod, tripod, tripod.
I, that's yes. So when we went back out there the following day, we made sure we were there around the exact same time, so we had similar, at least very similar
Yeah,
of
that
the
second time
sunshine
though,
and
we
everything.
did.
And I put it on a tripod this time. I tripoded it. I got it in the same
That
direction, and I kind of figured it out at that point because
that's
I had done
because
some
we
walking
were
around
more
too.
prepared when we went back because we took that second time back. That was like 3 trips in one day.
Oh, I
Hmm.
know. Yeah.
We went to 3 different locations in one day, all around that one area in Madison. So
Hmm.
So, but yeah, whenever I put it on the tripod, I was able to figure out what happened, and
well, common sense
it
prevails
was
a lot of times.
it was the way the light was coming through and the way the trees were. It gave us an appearance that there was somebody standing by a headstone.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it would have been right down by the Civil War area too.
Yeah, it was down by where the Civil War soldiers are buried. So,
Oh,
Hmm.
but we
it's
got
the
that.
one
We
of the.
actually have that up on our website. So
It's like one of the oldest cemeteries in Madison,
on our YouTube channel,
and
Hmm.
it's got everything
it's
from
got
Civil War
Civil War,
soldiers,
World
World
War
War One, World
One,
War
World War
Two,
II, and I think even Vietnam in there.
Vietnam, Korea. They're
Yeah.
all there.
They're pretty
They're,
much all of them. The soldiers from all those
it's
eras
kind of
are
like
buried
a
in there.
little Madison Arlington cemetery or something.
Hmm.
It's mostly soldiers
I
that are
don't get a
buried
lot, to
there.
be honest, in cemeteries, and I've done a ton of them. And the only ones I seem to have captured anything that may be legit is cemeteries where various groups have gone in and attempted to conjure things and other sorts of things like that.
Well,
But as far as cemeteries go, I'm a firm believer in places are haunted because some sort of tragic event or occurred there, like battlefields or murder scenes or car accidents. Because in my point of view, sometimes these spirits don't even know they're dead. They died so fast. These people, died so
right.
Hmm.
fast or tragically that they don't even know they died, man. At this point, and
Right.
their energy's still moving around, like they're still up and
Well,
kicking with us.
Right.
in cemeteries,
That's
there's
just my
also
personal point of view. So,
in cemeteries, I also have that how like I don't know. I tend to watch some of those shows too much, but some of them are pretty realistic, like Supernatural and stuff like that.
I don't know. I love
And
that show. That show's awesome.
right.
Yeah.
Um, so like how they have where the spirit, instead of how they like burn the bones to get rid of the spirit in that show.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
but sometimes it's not just that. It's like maybe there's like a ring or something that they've attached to her, an object.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, how many times does jewelry and personal objects get buried with the dead?
All the time.
So
Oh,
what's to say that they can't haunt those cemeteries because of that object is still
Mhm.
got them attached?
Yeah. If you talk to my good buddy John Zaffis, he'll tell you all about those haunted objects.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, for whatever reason, yeah, I do feel that energy does attach to some objects in particular,
so
whether
being
they were used in a ceremony or they're someone's favorite item or whatever the case.
oh yeah, definitely. So being down there in Virginia like that, I take it you probably been up by Gettysburg.
Oh yeah, I've investigated Gettysburg many times, man, many times, and
I
gotten
kind
some
of envy you a little.
pretty, pretty freaky stuff there, man. I like to go in the areas that are, I've been on the main battlefield many, many times and got some EVPs and things like that. But one place that I went that blew me away was the actual site of the cavalry battle. It was a couple miles away from the main battle because it happened. That's what really kicked off the battle because they accidentally met up. Both cavalries met up over there, and they started fighting. And I was walking through a place. There's monuments there, and a place where a lot of guys got killed. There was a whole bunch of guys dead right there on that one spot. And I'm walking through, and I'm just, I like to kind of use triggers when I'm investigating. I'll say, hey, who needs a shot of whiskey or who needs water? And I got an EVP that said it was a guy, and he said water, just like that, like he was wounded and he wanted water. It was really, it still sends a little bit of shiver down my back. And then right after that, I got another EVP. It sounded like someone's last dying breath, that real big exhale, like when
Yep.
they're dying. And then a little bit later, I'm over there by where some of the cannon sites were during the cavalry battle, and I started. I'm ex-military, so I started out yelling out military commands: "Fire at will! Fire at will!" And I kid you not, I got several bursts of musket fire and far off cannon shots.
Wow.
And I got it on the recorder and on my camera's audio.
Hmm.
So once I reviewed
That's
that
what
and I
I love.
found it on there, I was like, holy crap. I started calling all around Gettysburg. I said, was anyone lighting off fireworks? Was there any this is 10:30 at night, mind you.
Hmm.
Wow.
And on the cavalry side, they really don't monitor that, so you can go over there anytime because there's actually a couple of houses that are on that battlefield site, so they can't restrict access to it. So you can go park your car and just walk around and investigate. So I called all around. I tried to find out any information I could, and they're like, "No, man, nobody does reenactments at 10 at any time during the night out here. It all shuts down." And it was in the late fall too, so there was nothing going on in Gettysburg at this time. So
Hmm.
I was like, "Holy crap, that's awesome!" I mean, I was able to call out military commands and got a response. So, that stuff. That's what keeps me going in this stuff, and it's phenomenal to me when you capture stuff like that. I'm like, how the hell do you explain that? You can't.
You
No.
can't.
So
There's
whenever you did your investigations there at Gettysburg, did you feel that you got um, more of intelligent or more of residuals?
A little of both. It's kind of, I'd say a half and a half. Because like I said, the way I investigate is I tend to try to interact with them like I'm actually there with them and then yell, like I did yelling out the commands.
Hmm.
Hey, that's my friend Natalie. Hey, Natalie. um, yeah. So I mean, you get standard EVPs out there, and there's a lot of people, not just myself. A lot of other people have interacted with spirits there. They've captured some phenomenal things on tape. Some of that stuff, I'm sure you guys have seen that one of those two guys that just pulled over in the battlefield and those soldiers just started manifesting and walking out there.
I've
That
seen a
that's
lot of
phenomenal.
videos from Gettysburg.
I've
But
seen
that,
some, but I haven't. I don't know if I've seen that particular one.
oh man, it was several years ago. It was a hot item on the internet, man. I mean, these two guys were, they're just enthusiasts. They were going out there and they want to go on the battlefield and see if they capture something. So they pulled the car over on that main strip right that goes right through the center of the battlefield. And they're sitting there by some cannons, and you see like I think it's like 3 or 4 apparitions just come out of nowhere, and they're in full. I mean, they're in
Civil War gear.
Civil
Yeah,
War
Full Civil War gear. Yeah.
I
uniform,
seen the video
and they
that
just
he's
walk
talking about.
around for a minute, and then
Okay,
they
then
just
I may have
then
seen
they
that one.
just disappear. Yeah, it's phenomenal, man. And it, from what I understand, I can't confirm or deny that, but what I understand that piece of film was gone over by experts and said no, there was
Yeah, it
no
was.
CG or anything on that at all. So when you and then there's just all kind even local residents. I've interviewed numerous ones, and they said, man, we'll be sleeping at 10, 12, 1 in the morning, and you'll hear call boom like a cannon went off right beside our house, and we come flying out of the bed. Said it happens all the time, and the whole house will shake and all kinds of stuff. So
Wow.
you know,
Well, it doesn't
it,
surprise me because
yeah,
everybody we've talked to that's been in and around the Gettysburg and done their investigations there, they have always come back and talked to us about it and said how amazing
Oh yeah.
the
mm-hmm,
activity was
mm-hmm,
there. And that also goes to explain, when you get to that part, like you say, it's the original 13 colonies of the United States, it's where it all started, with all of that added on top of all the Native American stuff that went on in that area.
mm-hmm.
I mean, come on. There's bound to be tons of activity. And then
Oh, yeah.
to top it all off, you've got the oldest feud in America going on in that same region. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yep.
think about all that bloodshed going on. The paranormal activity in that area, in that region of the United States, has just got to be off the charts.
Yeah, and then you've got all the early settlers that came in here in West Virginia. Were primarily Irish, Scotch-Irish, Scottish, and then there were some Germans and Irish that came into the northern part. So they bring all of their folklore as well, and
Yep.
it's a hodgepodge of paranormal activity here. I mean, we've got it all. A lot of people don't even know this. I wrote about it in my UFO book too. So you had the 1952 Flatwoods Monster incident here, right?
Okay.
Blue Book was involved. All that stuff went down. It was worldwide news. And not five, let's see, 52, it was like 6 years later, a government funded project was built right here in the state of West Virginia called the Green Bank Observatory, where they actively search for extraterrestrial life to this very day. The largest movable land object in the world, which is a ginormous telescope, radio telescope, is at that facility. And there's no coincidence in that, man. I mean, Carl Sagan and Frank Drake started SETI right here in West Virginia after the Flatwoods Monster incident. And in the 1960s, West Virginia was considered the UFO hotspot of the world. A lot of people don't know that. If you
I didn't know
research
that.
it, you can find newspaper articles of it and everything else. So yeah, I mean that's the connection I was trying to make for folks in the book. I've got account after account dating back to the 1800s here that I uncovered in local churches. Back in the old days, and it was so rural here that people didn't get a lot of outside news from like say New York and stuff. So everybody would tell their reports and their experiences to the local churches. So I've got documents going back from to the 1800s of these massive airships that were, kind of described like a blimp. And the only thing was there was no blimps like that back in those days either. So, and we're talking late 1700s, early 1800s, all the way up into
Wow.
the 1900s. And they described these ships as going from one mountaintop to the other, which would mean it was miles across. So you've got all those types of accounts all the way up into modern day time. And I give little snippets of the accounts and then more modern accounts with abductions and then the Blue Book and Frank Drake, Carl Sagan starting SETI here. It's a whole big interconnection thing. So,
Well, and
and
then
it's
you add in the
literally,
cover up of the Men in
literally
Black.
Yeah, well, there was Men in Black here for the Flatwoods Monster incident, Men in Black here for the Mothman incidents. I mean, just in the
Oh yeah,
Mothman,
Mothman
it,
started in wasn't it Point Pleasant, West
yeah,
Virginia?
Point Pleasant, and that's there was thousands upon thousands of UFO sightings during that whole like say 10-year time frame, rough estimate. It was so prevalent. In fact, people would rush home from work, eat dinner with their families, get in their cars, and go out to where the bunkers were, park their cars, and watch the lights in the sky. And it was like a
Wow.
nightly thing. It blows my mind that people are not like demanding answers from the government. What the hell were we seeing? Because it's just like, well, it's UFOs, and then of course the government covers it all up over and over and over again.
Well, one of the reasons that they probably covered it up back then was because they didn't want to panic the public. At least that's what they say.
Yeah, that's one
And then,
excuse they
but if
use, and
you
it
look at
does
it,
make
if you look at the way things are now, with the way that Hollywood has done, I mean, they have brought to the silver screen all these different stories of UFOs, and
of course.
they went from the point where the UFOs or the aliens were dangerous and evil and everything, all the way to the point where the UFOs and the aliens were very helpful and friendly.
Well,
So
that's the thing they didn't
with
get to
all
you.
that in there, I'm wondering if that wasn't something that the government was behind too, to try and
Oh
get
yeah,
people jaded on UFOs or on
of course
alien,
it was.
you know.
Hollywood and the
Because
government
if
are
you're
like this.
watching this stuff in a movie, you're going to wind up getting jaded to it.
Mm-hmm. Of
And then
course,
once you're
they've
jaded
been
to it,
drip.
it's going to be easier for you to accept that it's actually true.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right. They drip feed it to us. They slowly introduce it year after year, more and more in depth. And that's what, and the government and Hollywood are like this, guys. I mean,
Mhm.
they are involved in projects together all the time. A lot of in the early days of when Hollywood was big in the 60s and 70s, there was ex-government officer, military officers that went into Hollywood and were in charge of creating films with Hollywood, man, on alien topics and various other ones.
Well,
You know,
yeah, I believe that.
Close Encounters is based off of a real event. People don't realize that it is based off of a real event that occurred at Holloman Air Force Base. I mean,
Right.
it,
But
it,
they made it at in Wyoming.
Devil Tower. Yeah.
That particular movie truly made Devil's Tower extremely famous.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is one of the coolest buttes that we have in this nation too. I mean, it's one of the largest. In fact, I believe it is the largest.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
It's
here's
crazy.
here's a little tidbit for you. Some actual scientists claim that Devil's Tower, Wyoming, isn't really a true butte. It's actually the stump of an ancient tree
Tree.
that
Mm-hmm.
has fossilized.
Yep.
Petrified, yeah.
Petrified
Yeah,
tree
petrified.
from the ancient forest on the earth.
Yeah,
Can you imagine? Now, if you think,
and there again, Tom's Nephilim comes in on that.
yeah. Well, think about this. Remember in the movie Avatar, giant trees that those people lived under.
The Avatar. Yeah.
Yeah, ginormous trees.
Hmm.
So
They lived
who knows?
inside the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're at
So,
that mark.
Yep. So
so
Time to end for bonus.
yep. Okay. So is there besides the website we got scrolling at the bottom? Is there any other website that you have or anything else you want to add?
I mean, just all my links are on there, man.
Yeah,
I'm
you can find
excited.
his YouTube link on there.
Yep, there's a new project I am involved with called Scare Network TV. We're doing all original content, real quality stuff, and we'll be launching that as soon as we get a lot more content to put up for folks. And it's a streaming service, so you can buy each project by itself or buy a subscription and save a lot of money. If you buy a year one, you get like 10% off.
Cool.
And it's the real deal. It's not Hollywood-fied investigating. We'll be covering every topic in the paranormal, and I encourage folks to come and check it out. And I'll be posting it all over my stuff as soon as we get it fully up and running very soon. We filmed several projects. The format we're working on is there's going to be a podcast once a week There also will be some shorts every week, a short investigation or local legend type things. And then at least once, probably twice a quarter, a full blown documentary investigation that will be very eye opening to folks. And it's the real, the real thing, not Hollywood-fied, none of that stuff. So, looking forward to that. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And we've been planning it since last year. So, and we're going to encourage other folks to put up content on the scarenetwork.tv as well. We want other folks to be involved in it. So, it's going to be good stuff. And more books coming out too, guys. Lots more books.
Cool.
And some TV projects I'm working on right now.
And all those books can be found on Amazon, by the way, too.
Yeah, just Amazon. Just look up my name on Amazon. It'll come up under authors, and you can. And there's a movie I was involved in on there too. You can buy called "The Flatwoods Monster Legacy of Fear" with Small Town Monsters. I was in that show with Seth Breedlove because I'm a local here. Right now that happened right up the road from me, right where I'm at right now. So my first cousins and all them went to school with the original witnesses. So they used to talk about when I remember hearing them, my mom's first cousins, and them say how scared they were of the Flatwoods Monster growing up. They didn't want to walk home from the bus or nothing, man, or walk, from school. They were scared to death.
All right, cool. All right.
And tomorrow night we're going to be.
We do have a brand new documentary coming out, guys, real soon called Malefice. It's going to blow some people's minds. It's me and Sean Austin and Ralph Sarchi's involved, and it kind of entails. We went to this location 5 years ago, and ever since that time, something's been following us and messing particularly with my buddy Sean Austin. You might know him from Demon Files and Ghost Loop, but he has something that has messed with him since that time. And it's a whole, the stuff we got there when we went back will blow your freaking minds. It's just some phenomenal stuff.
Looking forward to seeing that one.
It's kind of a full circle thing for us. We had to go back and we wanted to get rid of that thing. And we did, he did a whole, basically an exorcism of the property and everything. And we filmed it all, but we investigated it for 3 days before we did the clearing of the place. So it's pretty intense, man. We're still reviewing evidence from it, and the stuff we're getting is like, whoa, wait a minute. So I'm excited to share that with you guys. It's the first time I've shared talking about it. So it's going to be coming out in the next few months, more than likely.
All right. Joe?
And Thursday, tomorrow, we are going to be on Mind Dog TV, 7 p.m. Central. We're going to be on the other end of the spectrum, though.
We're going to be the interviewees.
Yeah, we're going to be the guests. Cool. Friday, we return with David Heatherly. And Saturday, we will be on Beth Allen's show.
As interviewees again.
Yeah, we got a full week ahead of us. All right.
So everybody,
stay safe, and remember, anything's possible.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right.